is the imposter syndrome? Okay. It's the inability to internalize our success, and it's coupled with a fear of being outed as an unqualified fraud. We hear that term fraud very often. This is really important because while most people will feel this sense of the imposter syndrome, uh, sometimes it can be crippling. Sometimes as we're just going through a change, maybe it's a new job, maybe it's an area we don't feel quite as comfortable with, but how can we embrace the fact that sure, some of this is going to happen, it's part of being human, but how can we make sure that it doesn't take up an overwhelming amount of our energy and our space, and it doesn't hold us back from things? I talked about this, but okay, so in doing my research, I'd never heard this before. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So on one hand, we talk about, especially people that are very successful, they're going to feel this, sense of being an imposter. On the other side of this coin here, there's something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's people who are incompetent at something but are unable to recognize their own incompetence. Have you ever known anyone like that? When I was reading this, I had this flashback to this guy I met on an outward bound trip. And I had done this outward bound Sierra Mountains. I loved it. It was incredibly challenging. And I said, I want to do something again. So I picked this trip. Don't ask me why. It might have been because that's when I had vacation, but it was between Christmas and New Year's. And it was a dog sledding trip in the Mahoosic Mountains in Maine. Well, it just so happened when you weren't dog sledding, you would cross country ski. And of course, there were very few daylight hours and it was cold. Oh my gosh, it was 20, 30 below. We didn't have tents, only tarps. But so the trip is getting ready to start. Everyone comes into the airport and they have the van waiting for us. And there's a guy and they tell us, you know what, don't really talk about your careers. This is really meant for self-exploration. 10 minutes later, I'm in the van and sitting next to this guy. And he says to me, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm in politics. What do you do? And I thought, my gosh, we just told, let's center on ourselves. And you're like, hey, this is going to be easy. I've done so much, skiing and whatever. So I always remember this. 3-4 days go by. It is cold. The days are short. We end up being in sleeping bags with people that we don't even know. So here's what happens. Okay, so one night, afternoon, it was so cold. And the guy that was talking to me, he starts crying and he couldn't take it. And so he actually had to go home. So when I think about that syndrome, I think a lot about a lot of people, but there's some people anyway. And I think about this guy. So what do people say? We're in the midst of this, the imposter syndrome, they say. These are quotes that came off the internet. But I could have written some of these. I'm constantly undermining myself with, this is probably a silly question, right? Silly question, I'm going to ask it anyway. Or I feel like I'm going to be fired at any minute. Who's had that feeling? I spend so much time living in fear that someone is going to call me out on my shit. It doesn't matter how much experience I have in a certain area or how much I have prepped. I still assume people will see right through me. Interestingly, when we look at famous people, this is Maya Angelou. I've written 11 books, but each time, prolific writer and so incredibly talented, as you probably know. I've written 11 books, but each time I think, oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everyone and they're going to find me out. Tina Fey, the beauty of the imposter syndrome is you vacillate between extreme egomania and a complete feeling of, I'm a fraud. Oh God, they're onto me. I'm a fraud. So you just try to ride the egomania when it comes and enjoy it, and then slide through the idea of being a fraud. Kate Winslet, sometimes I wake up in the morning before going off to a shoot, and I think, I can't do this, I'm a fraud. And sometimes it looks like this, right? And I've shared this before about careers, but this can also be, in the course of months. I'm not sure what I'm doing. And then oh man, I'm a rock star. And then, I stink and I'm back. And it's this up and down. And so, where's this coming from? And so this is my inner voice through the years. So oftentimes I would, be in the midst of something and I'd come up to some major challenges, take on a really tough assignment, and I would truly believe, you know what, I'm going to get fired, right? It's going to happen any day because I'm not going to turn this around fast enough. I'm not going to do this fast enough. People are going to lose confidence in me. And then like things would go well and I'd be like, yeah, seriously, I should be promoted yesterday. Or I get it to an area and I'd be, maybe I especially worked with people that were huge quant jocks. And, a couple of people, I'm like, oh my God, they have like these superpowers in analyzing financial statements in a matter of seconds. And it would take me definitely more than minutes. So I would think I'm not smart enough. And then other times I would be, this is so obvious. Like, how come people don't get it? And then sometimes I just be happy where I'm at. Like, oh man, I better just hold on to what I have. And then I would feel, oh, I'm so much better than this. Come on. I need to work even harder. And then others, I'd be like, kicking ass here, man, kicking ass. Like same person having all these like different feelings. And then I got development feedback. I suck, right? They're onto me now. I suck. And then as I kind of, especially as I go, had to deal with these emotions, through so many years, and you're like, yeah, okay, I got that, I can see that. And then I definitely have, I'm going to talk about different types of imposter syndrome. I had the perfectionist one. I'm going to wait till it's perfect, which would lead me to working late at night, early mornings because I want it to be perfect. It's going to be the best. And other times I feel like, boom, drop the mic. If someone was like in a bad mood or something, I think it's about me, right? They don't believe in me. They don't like me anymore, whatever. And then start to realize they're not even thinking about me. It's about them. This one, I would say has followed me through my entire life is that desire to prove, do more. If I run another marathon when I was younger, if I climb another mountain or do another outward bound, if I, whatever, get another degree. And I just started realizing that, or internalizing, I should say, I'm good enough the way I am. I'm pretty good the way I am. I'll tell you a funny story some other time, what I learned on a Tony Robbins Walking on Hot Coals course. Okay. But if you could see in my mind, this is what it looked like when it was bad. Oh my God, I'm crying, this or that, right? All this stuff. But then like when I'm on top of it, feeling bold, I'd be like, game on, beep, 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 right? Like a lot of bad words. I have to say my tough part here is it's a lot of bad words. And I think it's because it becomes with so much emotion and that, when I would have that inner voice is like bad. And I'd be, like I said, badass. But this voice over here, the imposter voice, very afraid, timid, uncertain, anxiety, sometimes not sleeping. So that's what mine look like. Now, this came from an article. We're going to share all this with you in the newsletter. And these are the different types of imposter syndrome. The first one is the perfectionist. I'm going to work to that thing as perfect, right? So you're polishing. And reality, if you would have stopped polishing 20% of time ago, no one would have even noticed a difference. I definitely had that. The superwoman, right? The workaholic. I'm going to keep doing it. Someone wants me to do such and such. I'm going to do it. And how many times has this happened to you? I'm so guilty of this. I would be at work and I think, okay, I'm leaving now. And maybe it would be 6 o'clock. You know what time I'd actually walk out the door? 7:30. Who did I disappoint? The people closest to me, my family, and certainly myself. So definitely suffered from that. The natural genius. This is the person, I honestly don't know if too many people here, and this wasn't me, but it's when things come relatively easy for you, and that there's times then, because they come relatively easy, that if you bump up against challenges, you feel like a failure then. The soloist, I'll just do it myself. have difficulty delegating. I'm going to do it myself because I don't trust. And so that impacts, not only you, it impacts, especially if you're a leader, other people around you. And then there's the expert. I'm going to be an expert. I'm going to study as much as I can. And you know what? I'm going to know everything inside and out. And of course, the challenge with that is you can't be an expert on everything. But, it's also this thing if people find out. What the heck causes imposter syndrome? Well, there's a lot of research on this, and frankly, they don't really know. But what the researchers think, it's a combination of it's your upbringing. Maybe, you were brought up in a family when it was good. It was really good. Like, man, you know what, Sarah, you did such and such. But when you failed, it was like, you know what, I'm really disappointed in you. And so it's the swing, right? And it leads to uncertainty. Sometimes it's just a personality trait. Sometimes if we're a little bit more compulsive, there's certainly, there's a good chance it's going to carry over in this area. Sometimes it's culture because we don't feel as accepted. And so, this is the case in the D&I space. I got to work harder. I got to do this. I got to do this. And the reality is some of that is definitely true. A lot of it's true. So how do we take control? These are my tips and things that I've learned painfully, and they certainly have helped me. So I asked myself, who's that person in my head? What do I mean by that? I often thought, like, when I would have these, thoughts or challenges, that's a little girl in there. That's a scared little girl. And I'd have to say, mommy's home. You know what? You can go back and play with your clothes or play with your toys or whatever, go ride your bike, but mommy's home, right? Because the thought of the person and the voice sometimes the voice in our head are really quite immature, and they're made up of, scared little girl from the past. And I'd say, I know it sounds funny, but I'd like, who's in charge here? Mom is in charge. And so that's what I would say to myself. Check your self-talk. What's your mantra? If what you're saying to yourself is like, oh my God, if this happens, oh my God. So I really have my own mantra that really hasn't changed that much over the years. And so I'd say that mantra to myself. And I actually have a couple different ones, but one of them was, I will not be denied the opportunity to do my best. And I'm not going to do it to myself, and I'm not going to let other people do that to me. And that, because I knew how hard that I'd worked for it. The third is empty your backpack. I talked about the, being on the outward bound, hiking adventure, but that was something for me that what I learned, I'm carrying this heavy backpack, and I had a very emotional experience during that trip. I started unpacking this backpack, and there's other people's stuff in there, my past failures, what I perceived as failures, just kind of stuff. And I had this, feeling and an analogy like, oh man, I need to empty this thing. It is too heavy. And if I keep carrying this crap around, I am not going to be able to move. So what's in that backpack? What are things that you perceive as failure? Let it go. Anger, resentment, so-and-so did this, whatever. Let it go, because who it hurts, it's us, right? Empty the backpack. Another one is stop comparing ourselves. What's been so bad around this is social media. Social media is like, oh, look at everyone's going on vacation. Everyone's doing this. Everyone has 15 friends. That's ridiculous, right? We take these little snapshots and it looks like, everything's so rosy. It's not real, right? So this idea of even at work, stop comparing ourselves to other people. Do your own thing, do your own journey. We talked about that definition of success. Do you. And you know what? Remember what it's like when you succeed at something. Remember that feeling. Call that feeling back up. I know in roles especially that were long, and the turnaround or transformation, whatever, was going to take a long time, I would remember what that felt like, and I'd create kind of mini points on the journey to feel that again. And so I do this a lot during the day with small things. I don't know if it's because I played sports, but like when I'm, get my daughter ready for bed and I take her socks off and we've got our little laundry thing in the corner, I always shoot the basket, man. I get the socks and I'm like, game on, mommy, right? Game on, Taurus. And that sense of boom. So find ways during the course of the day that you're like, got this, right? Because that idea of even thinking like an athlete sometimes is so great. Finishing, finishing the the last shot, going through the race, whatever it is, create opportunities to celebrate what you're doing. Own a mistake. And you know what? I learned this one because I'm telling you, this is like a big, well-kept secret. Sometimes like if we screw something up, like, oh yeah, screwed it up, like, oh yeah, you know what? I missed that one. I own that. What's someone going to say? Own it big time, because that actually shows confidence. You know what? If something's scary to you, let's talk about the finance thing, right? Or it's an area, I don't like public speaking. Go do some public speaking, right? Instead of being afraid of what that thing is like, face it head on, and then celebrate the journey, celebrate your progress. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. Totally pumped. I'm going to introduce you to two people. One is Kay Benedict, and she's the VP and GM over at BD. She's got a really impressive background of sales and marketing, both U.S. and global. She's lived abroad, MBA. She's a CPA, and I've known Kate for a long time, and I really want her to share her insights. Now, Jenny Lee is someone I've also known for a long time, and Jenny and I have worked together a few times, both on the consumer side at J&J, and I should say Kate and I worked together as well, and on the medical device side. And Kate's someone that I would definitely consider someone that I've mentored and sponsored, and both two incredible women, different styles and approaches, but certainly I think they will offer so much to this conversation. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So with that, let's bring Kate up. All right. Let's take a second. Okay, Kate.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Alexis, can you turn the video on? There we go.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
How are you?
So good. Okay. So good to see you. I just had, a chance to get reunited with you a few minutes ago, but, you have really done a super job in terms of navigating your career. You've also coached a lot of women. You've experienced a lot of things, highs and challenges, as we all have. So as you're listening to this conversation, what thoughts do you have and what words of wisdom do you have?
Yeah, Denise, my gosh, I could just see myself in so many of those examples, and especially the one about feeling like you're going to get fired all the time. And what came to my mind, and this might have been when we worked together about that time, but at one point my boss came to me and actually said, hey, listen, I'd like you to interview for this job overseas. And my immediate comment to him was, are you trying to get rid of me? I mean, instead of realizing this was such a huge compliment that he felt that I was able to take on an expatriate assignment, which are highly sought after and, competitive. And I viewed it as, oh my gosh, I've done something wrong on this team and he's trying to get rid of me. So it was stupid. But I can totally relate.
Example, Kate, of, that's great.
But I go through, and just some of the examples for me is, feeling like you have to have that example of, I have to have all the degrees and everything on paper. And when I made the really difficult choice to leave Johnson & Johnson, 5 or 6 years ago, there was an opportunity at a different company. It was a medical device company, but it was in the pharmaceutical space. And all of my career had actually been in medical device. And it was a great opportunity. It was a $2 billion P&L and 700 people. And someone I knew was there and thought I'd be a good choice. And I literally was talking to my husband and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go for it. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, well, I don't meet any of the criteria. I mean, they want 10 years experience with pharmaceuticals and they want this and this and this. And it was funny because he said to me, okay, you made me read that book, Lean In, and you're not leaning in. And so it was my husband who called me on my you-know-what and made me lean in and apply for that job. And then I turned out being successful. And that job was a phenomenal experience. I learned a ton and wouldn't be where I am today unless I'd done it. So, I mean, I think we can all appreciate, how we all feel like imposters from time to time.
So, Kate, let me ask you this. going through these experiences, what have you learned about kind of, I hate to use this word, but it is taking control of that voice of, being able to say, okay, you know what? I hear myself saying this, but you know what? I've got this other part of me that knows that that's not true.
Yeah.
What have you learned and what have you done over the years to, not that we, totally ever master it, but we sure become a lot more wise. And the thought that you have now seen and what the advantages sometimes of as we're advancing in our career, we then do have successes.
Correct.
If you can think back, maybe this is a better way to ask the question. If you could go back to that younger self, what would you say and what would you tell that person she's going to learn?
Yeah, you know what? I reflect on this a lot. And I think for me, confidence for me today comes from the fact that I am competent in what I do, and I'm comfortable and I'm courageous. And I have had to learn that over the years. And probably the best example is I have had mistakes that I've made, like all of us do. And guess what? I didn't get fired, right? I mean, I was called out and nothing happened. And so for me, whenever someone presents me with something and I'm like, ooh, I'm not quite sure if I know how to do that, I kind of think back, I think it was Richard Branson had a quote a number of years ago, and it was something to the effect of, if someone offers you a really great opportunity and you're not really sure if you can do it, just say yes and figure it out later. And I grab onto that now because you know what? I am competent in what I do. We all are. We all know what we're good at. We just have to remind ourselves that what got us to this point, we did something right. And then just assume that you have the inner strength. You're courageous enough to try something new, because when we try, even if we fail, we get better and we grow. And that's going to propel us forward. And so that's sort of, I wish I had known that from 20 years ago. Then, I didn't. I had to make all the mistakes that you've kind of talked about.
Yeah. And you know what? I was really excited to have you share your thoughts, because when I met you, which is probably 10 years ago, right? It's probably 10 or more years ago. I really saw someone that was incredibly competent, incredibly talented, but I always saw you as confident and bold and a risk taker. So it's so wonderful to have you share, what you've learned, and that, you don't always feel that way, but, you do it. And is this fair to say, at least this was my experience when I started off, the degree to which I felt these things sometimes was paralyzing for me, that I wouldn't be able to relax on the weekend. I would worry about, what if I made this it would be a little mistake, what if this wasn't perfect on this slide? What if this wasn't? And as time went on and kind of wrestling with that, I don't know if I just lost the energy to have it incapacitate me, but was that an experience for you?
It absolutely was. I mean, Denise, I was that one who was always the first to the office and the last to leave, who would make excuses to work on the weekend. And honestly, I think the best thing that ever happened to me was life happened to me. And all of a sudden I became a mom and a wife, and I couldn't do it all. And finally you realize, to your point earlier, I'm not spending time with the people who I love most in this world. And I'm spending time on my job, which also is very important to me. I don't want to minimize that in any way. I love what I do, but you got to find the balance. And I actually, when I started to pull back a little bit, I actually found that I was better at everything. And so, it's one of those where you think you're doing the right thing, and you feel very loyal, right, and very obligated. You don't want to let anybody down, but at the end of the day, you're letting everybody down if you don't live into yourself.
Absolutely. Totally. Such great lessons, Kate. Thank you. And thank you for sharing. What we're going to do now is move to Jenny Lee. Hey, Jenny.
Hi.
Okay. Jenny and I have known each other for a long time, and someone that I just care about deeply, and saw her, very early in her career, and just, I was like, she is just crazy talented and just so likable. And I always wanted to see her succeed, and tried to, sponsor her as much as possible. So I thought it was so important because I've seen her grow so much as a leader, as someone that's now a mentor and sponsor of others. And so, Jenny, I really want to share kind of your journey and what you've learned.
Thank you. First of all, thank you. You are a career angel to me. I know you coined the term, but you absolutely are. So thank you for having me. And also, hats off to Kate. You are totally a badass. So nice. Yeah, actually, I'm so excited to be on this webcast. And I did a little bit of self-reflection as I was preparing, I guess, for it. And I see, you know, in my life, there's still moments today where I do that oscillation and I have those feelings. And I think I kind of bucketed them into 3 groups, I think. The first is, like Kate said, anytime you go into this space where you don't have the exact match, and it's whether it's a new category, you're moving from consumer to device, or I moved into med ed from marketing, all of these bring a lot of insecurities and unknowingness. Oh, am I gonna be able to do this? I think the second one that is a crusher for me personally, maybe you guys have experienced, is getting feedback. I have an example of that, which is my whole life. You guys might see this now. I love to speak in front of people. I love it. I love people. I love talking.
Oh, you're so good at that too.
No, not at all. Oh, you're going to get me first.
You have to tell that story. You've got to tell that. But yes, because you are fantastic at that.
No, but I love it. And recently, one of my managers, he said, you know, Jenny, you did a great job presenting the strategic plan, and the strategy was spot on, and the plan was great, but we need to talk about your presentation skills. And it was like my whole life flashed in front of my eyes. I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing my whole life? So I think that really hit me, but it also taught me how important resilience is and perspective. So that was another big one. And the last one is something that is more about specific projects or endeavors where I have hesitation because I'm not sure I can do it. So not as big as changing sectors or companies, but just small things that are new where I feel unsure. And so I end up hesitating. And I've developed some mechanisms. Yeah.
Jenny, one thing I do want you to talk about is that you are extremely humble. And how do you manage that great humility with the idea of kind of owning your successes?
That's a great question. I don't think I've mastered that for sure. And I'm not sure my wife would agree that I'm humble, but I try and celebrate the people around me really as much as I can, because it is a team effort. And I've been working with you on it. I feel like I'm trying to say, okay, I did do an okay job on that, but it's still super hard and I have not mastered that at all.
Well, you know what? It's really interesting. Next week, we're going to talk about what new research is showing about confidence in women, and the stronger that we come across to like own things, etc., it actually comes back to hurt us. And that the rules for women are different than the rules for men about this idea of assertiveness and confidence. We're going to talk about that next week. And it is this balance of these, if they call them pro-social, empathy and relatedness with assertiveness. And so, your struggle sometimes, or not struggle, but your learning sometimes may also be from cues from the environment that you may get. And so, but what I want to do is, we've got 20 minutes and I want to share you, the two of you. Like I just have to say, I love both of you dearly. I'm so incredibly proud of you to watch you grow as women, to watch you grow as leaders and people that you have both. Both of these incredible women are on the board for the Mentoring Place, and I'm just so proud. And I can't talk anymore because I want to share you with other women on the call. So Alexis, let's go ahead and bring in Kate. And then let's see, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay. Hi. Here we go. So I'm going to bring in, I'm not sure who this is because it doesn't say from the, I can't tell by the name, but it's APUN1. There we go. Hi. Okay, it's A.1. All right, I'm going to move on to Sophia. Sophia.
Hello.
Hi, Sophia.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for picking this topic. I think it hits really close to home with a lot of people on the call, but I'm someone that definitely suffers from the imposter syndrome, and I'm still fairly early in my career. And I just kind of wonder, do you have any tips? I just recently took a promotion in a new job within the company, and it comes with a lot of responsibilities and it seems like that imposter syndrome seems to be creeping up a little bit more than it did in my past role. So do you have any suggestions or tips in trying to overcome that, especially in being in that new position and still building that trust with your new supervisor and the people around you and having to come off as confident in what you're doing, and not letting it debilitate you in the fears of that new role?
What do you think, Kate and Jenny?
I guess I can jump in. One of the things that was the hardest for me to do early on was to say 3 words: I don't know. And that is the most empowering thing. And to be honest, what I've learned throughout my career is actually saying those exact 3 words will make you a better leader, because your vulnerability makes you approachable by your team. And when your team looks at you and they can see that, oh, she's not perfect or he's not perfect, they can relate to you, and then they'll follow you. So what I would say to you is, don't pretend you know something that you don't know. Be confident that you'll learn it. And so when someone says, what should I do on this, or what is your guidance here, give your point of view, but then say, you know what, I'm still learning. I'd like your perspective, and rely on your team, because you can only be as good as your team. And my team currently knows more about me than I know about my job. I mean, because they've been here longer, and I rely on them every single day. And I would encourage you to do the same. Rely on others, and say, I don't know if you don't, but then just learn it.
Yes, that's great. And Jenny, what do you think?
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think that paired with the hunger to learn is always a nice way to show up. And then what I do, I've been doing it more recently too, is I catch myself thinking, oh, if I show up and they're not impressed with how I perform, I turn it off immediately and I switch to the positive thinking. And so it's immediately, how great am I going to do? What are the positive benefits that are going to be the outcome? And it sounds a little cheesy, but it really makes a difference for me anyway.
Absolutely. I think great advice from the two of you. We're going to move on to Melissa, and I do want to get to you, the APU11, but I think your microphone is muted. So I'm going to go to Melissa, then I'll come back to you. If you can unmute your microphone, then you'll be all set. All right, Melissa. All right, Melissa, are you good? Okay, in order to speak, you want to unmute your microphone. Okay, Melissa?
It says I'm muted by the host.
Oh, are you there, Melissa? Oh, we heard you for a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, there you go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You said something that really kind of resonated with me on a current project I'm working about celebrating the people around you. Can you tell me some strategies that you've done to keep it? And it's always nice to send a nice email, but how do you celebrate those people around you?
So, for me, I do it a lot of different ways. I mean, first of all, nothing's more important than giving feedback in the moment. So that's absolutely, you want to give it quickly, you want to be specific about it. And then I usually read the person. Sometimes people really like to be recognized in front of their peers, and other times it makes people really uncomfortable. So that's about getting to know your team. But that's really, I think, the key. And then secondly is involve your team in, what you want to achieve as the team. And then, I often let my team, speak instead of me at the meetings, give them, some exposure, because, as the team leader, you ultimately look good if your team looks good. It's not about you anymore. And so just by giving someone else, paying it forward, giving them the opportunity, that will sometimes be more than anything that you can say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jenny, what do you think?
Yeah, support the hell out of them. I love that idea.
Yes.
Second that, yeah.
And something that I often did, particularly under stressful situations, is that when I was doing a one-on-one with someone, but I would say to them, I support you unconditionally, because especially when times are, scary, or it's uncertain, or it's high risk, and people are going to, make mistakes. Or I'll tell you, one of the things that I found was that in very stressful situations, sometimes people will just lose it. They'll say things that they don't mean. They might, do something, act in I'm not talking about like crossing a line, but getting pretty close to the line. One of the best things you can do as a leader, because it's not a pattern, it's probably a one-time thing, is to say, you know what, I got your back. Instead of chastising, making the person, I always say, forgive, unless something's a pattern. But I could tell you, have I ever lost it and said something that I wish I didn't say? Of course. But sometimes forgiveness is such a powerful tool that, and support during challenging times. So those are great questions, and thanks for your comments. All right. So next up we have, Marilyn.
Hi, this is Mary Lynn.
Mary Lynn, I'm sorry. I really should wear glasses. Thank you.
That's okay. Thanks again. I loved your talk at Sanofi about a week ago.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you.
So I would love to hear what you guys think about how to balance coming across, being confident, allowing yourself to come across as confident, and yet the reality that I think it's a reality that we really are judged differently from our male counterparts, our male colleagues. So how do you navigate that?
Yes, we're going to talk about that next week, but I think having both Jenny and Kate here, to get your thoughts and opinions, because there is growing research around the fact that, you're suggesting that the filters are different. And it's not just men and how men see us, but it's sometimes how other women see us. So, with that, Jenny, how about if we start with you and then we'll go to you, Kate?
Sure. I mean, I think I always look at it by leading with authenticity. That's always core. And then, what Denise said about empathy and really listening, that combined with the confident and knowing what you're proposing or moving forward, I think that balance, if you're able to strike it with the authentic foundation, is pretty priceless in business.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I totally agree. And, something that I try to do at times is also add a little bit of humor. So you can come across really strong, and then just add a little bit of levity to the situation, or just kind of tease them a little bit. I've used that because it softens you a little bit, because obviously as strong women, we can come across maybe as a bit robotic. I mean, I've gotten that feedback before that, that was really deliberate, and you would never hear that from someone else potentially. So, but yeah, a little humor to it. Sometimes it softens it a little bit. At least I found that.
Absolutely. I think that's terrific. We have a couple of questions. One is, how have some of the women and leaders on this call overcome the imposter syndrome when you have all the qualifications on paper, a great track record, but still seem to be denied opportunities? I'm starting to consider outside opportunities, but experiencing challenges there too. I'm still going, not giving up, because that next opportunity I know is waiting for me somewhere. One phone call and meeting can change my career. What are your thoughts?
That is such.
Sponsor. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, The question, I think, first of all, you're doing the right thing, and it sounds like you're very confident and you're going for it. So good for you. You know, one of the things that I said once in an interview, at the very end, when you go to sell yourself, why am I the best person for the job? I looked the person in the face and I said to them, why not me?
Yeah.
And it changes the way they think, because when you're just trying to say why me, then there's a whole lot of, they can think about, well, here's why not this, why that. But when you actually say, well, why not me? It makes a difference. And so, look, I don't know if that works for everybody, but that worked in that particular situation. But I just keep going for it and just tell your story as often as you can. There's been a lot of jobs I've interviewed for that I did not get, but I learned from them and I continued to evolve my story. And eventually the right job will come along at the time then you're looking for it, and you'll be the one chosen.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Great advice, Jenny.
Yeah, and I love that you have that positive thinking too, that there is the right job out there for you. Continue to build that network and find those sponsors for you. Dig into what's going on right now, but then also look to the future. How can you really find your sponsors?
Yes, definitely. And, this question is such a good one because, for many in the industry they're in, the industry may be changing dramatically. More jobs may be getting outsourced. And so sometimes saying, I'm looking at this one path, maybe I should create some other paths here. And what do those look like? And so, my strategy from a career standpoint, and I probably shared this with both of you, was I always wanted to have options. Mm-hmm. So I was always thinking about, okay, what options am I creating for myself, either through this experience or through additional training, learning, through the network, through, maybe sponsorship. So that's also something to think about. And for the person that asked the question, just send me a private email, and I'm going to talk with you because you're always so incredibly supportive. Let me see if I can help at all. Okay, so thank you. All right. I also have, how do you get over not feeling that what we're doing is, how do we get over not feeling like we are not good enough? What role does executive presence play in overcoming the imposter syndrome? What do you think, Jenny?
Still working on it every day. I think, right, you do. It's the Tina Fey quote. You're oscillating between, I'm amazing, I deserve a promotion, and crap, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't even be here today. So it's turning it tide. I'm here for a reason. I know I can do this. People believe in me, and more importantly, I believe in myself. And so go out, have those small wins, and make them add up into something great.
Yes, yes. And Kate?
Well said, Jenny. I wouldn't really say anything different. That's it. You just got to go for it. And, it's scary, but just know that what you're feeling inside, most of the time people are not seeing it on the outside. And just you just got to keep going for it and keep practicing and keep trying, and it'll all work out.
Kate, there's a really good, I almost put it in here, but there was a visual about, when we're having these challenges, how we see ourselves and then how other people see us. Mm-hmm. And, with this question, one of the techniques that I certainly used was the one of visioning. Mm-hmm. So I'm going into a situation, and I would vision what it's going to be like what the drop the mic look was going to be. And so I would already come in with the, music playing into the meeting or whatever it is. Did it always work out? No, but I'll tell you, more often than not it did, because I had the expectation. And then if I tripped up, I'm getting back on, right? And even though, sure, you've got in the back, I would say, whose voice is that? Whose voice am I listening to? Is it the scared little girl? Mm-hmm. Or in my case, after I had my daughter, I'm like, mommy's home. Because mommy, Denise may be afraid, but mommy is one, tough cookie. And you guys I know you could relate to that too, having, your own children. But when it comes to, protecting my Sierra, protecting my family, I'm like, whoa, right? It's hard to take me off my mommy game. So I would bring that persona into things, because I'd be like, okay, let's go. So that's something to think about. Who are you bringing into that meeting with you? Is it the scared girl? Or is it, like, oh, they're not going to like me, they're going to whatever, or is it the adult? It's not about having kids. That was one of my identities, or it is one of my identities, but that's something to think about. I hope that's helpful. Okay, so we've got another question from Kathleen. All right, Kathleen.
Oh, sorry, I had wrote it. Hi, thank you. So I'm new to my role, and I find myself, when praise comes in on small tasks that I'm completing, I find myself questioning the authenticity of the compliment, because to me it just seems like natural, and the task I'm doing isn't that monumental. So how do you overcome, and being able to understand that every small compliment is true and means something if it doesn't seem that hard to you? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think, Jenny and Kate?
What I would say, and because I'm one of those people that feels weird when I get a compliment, I'm always trying to downplay it as well. What I would say is, and actually someone gave me this coaching, when you downplay it, when someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you. Because when you downplay it, you actually minimize the time it took for that person to actually give it to you. And so when I thought about that, because I don't like to let people down, and that actually helps me accept a compliment, because someone took the time to say something nice, and I assume good intent with whenever someone says something to me. It's the positive mindset that I need to have to be successful just in life. It's the way I want to view the world, and from a positive perspective. So that might help.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
Yes, I think sometimes it's just thank you. But oftentimes, how do we do this? Like if you say to another woman, oh my gosh, that's such a cute outfit. Oh, this thing, I got it on sale at the rack, right? Or I was at Kohl's. It's like we got to make it as small as possible versus thank you. Thanks. You don't have to go like, yeah, isn't it? It's great. Thank you. and I also think it's role modeling for other women. I have to get to this question. I love this. Okay, so this person says, I'm a senior at Penn studying bioengineering. Woo! I didn't go to Penn, but I'm like, go STEM, let's go. I'm trying to really carve a career for myself, being the first person in my family to go to college, and I've gotten a lot better at being confident in my own abilities and visions. However, I'm still working on building on my resilience while in a hyper-competitive environment. How do you suggest strengthening that inner voice? Do you have any books, podcasts, recommendations, or just tips?
Yeah, I think resilience is one of the key tenets to confidence, 100%, because you are always, for the rest of our lives, we're always going to get feedback, we're always going to get hits, but being able to stand up strong right after, I think is so important. Brene Brown and all of her work, I think has been so fantastic for me personally. And I think having a strong supportive network around you, we have an amazing J&J crew up here. And, if you have a hit at work, you go to the crew, your pack, they build you up, you build each other up, and you get right back up.
Absolutely. And we just have we're actually out of time, but Kate, do you have some advice on that one?
You know what? I would say I'm a big reader. And one of the books that I loved is, I forget the author's name, but it's called Greatness, the 16 Characteristics of True Champions. And it really just helps you just think about a way to approach all that you're worried about. And the other thing I would recommend is Strength Finders, the Gallup survey.
Yes.
I learned some things about myself that I didn't realize were strengths. And it was really empowering to be like, wow. And so that'll make you feel good about yourself. So definitely take that test, because we all have strengths.
Absolutely. For the questions that we didn't, we're able to get to, we'll go through all of them, and I'm going to incorporate as many as I can in the next session with Dr. Melnick. I really want to thank everyone that joined today, and this was a phenomenal conversation. It really lived into what I hoped it would be when starting this. And Jenny and Kate, thank you so much for the gift of your time and insights and wisdom. Love you both.
Thanks so much, Denise.
Everyone have a super weekend. Okay, enjoy yourself.
Bye.
And relax. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Bye-bye.